Photoshop actions are a great way to save huge amounts of time when editing because you can apply both complex and even tedious, laborious tasks at the touch of a button, and it just makes life so much easier. The problem with actions, though, is that there is a right way and a wrong way of creating them. If you create them incorrectly, then you can have playback issues because Photoshop becomes confused about the layers that it should be working with, and it's typically images that have layers intact where this problem occurs, which is why we're going to look at creating an action with an image that already has some layers. So to get started, we just need to open up the Actions panel, and I have it set up within my panels on the right hand side. If you haven't customized Photoshop and it's not visible, just go up to Window on the main menu, click on Actions, and then it will appear over here on the right, and you can either drag it into the panels and nest it in there, or you can just work with it sticking out into the image. What I'm going to do to get started is just create a new set. So I'm just going to call this landscape, and then that creates a folder, because when you create actions, they will typically need to be saved within a set. So I have some other sets above, and then once you have your folder or set created, then just go down to the Create New Action button, which is a square with a plus symbol in the center. And then we can name the action so that it's quickly and easily identifiable. Today I'm just going to apply a bleach bypass because it's a simple technique, but it's one that allows me to show you how to do certain things that will avoid those playback issues that I mentioned earlier on. And the playback issues typically just stop the action because, as I say, Photoshop becomes confused, it can't be applied, and then you're left wondering what's happening. So once you've got the name in there, just hit the record button, and now everything that we do in Photoshop is being recorded. So I don't have any layers selected, but when I create new layers, they will appear at the top of the stack. If one of your bottom or middle layers is selected, just click on the one at the top so that any new layers that are created at the top of the stack. So to get started with this one, I'm going to create a levels adjustment layer, and I'm just going to take the white point from 255 to 200, close that down, and then change the blending mode from normal to multiply. And then next up, I'm going to create a black and white adjustment layer, and I'm just going to have a little play with some of these sliders to lighten and darken things up. And that's good. And then I'm just going to reduce the opacity of this layer to 40%. Next up, I'm going to create a curves adjustment layer, and then just take the brightness to roughly where it was at the beginning. So what you'll see here is that every time we create a new step or do something different, that is recorded as a step within the action. And the reason that playback problems occur is that if you suddenly decide, oh, I need to go back to another layer to work on that, or you need to drag the curves layer from the top of the panel down to below black and white, for instance, if you just move them manually, that's where the problem can occur. So what we can use here to get around that is lots of different shortcuts. So holding down Control on a PC or Command on a Mac and using the left square bracket key while the curves was selected, I've moved it down one space, and then just by holding down Control and then the right square bracket key, I've moved it back to the top. So doing it that way tells Photoshop that that particular layer has been moved. I know it sounds strange, but it really does make a huge difference. And we can also, just by holding the Alt key and the left square bracket key, you'll see there that I can move down the layers, and then I can move back up that's all being recorded as a step. It's not necessary for the action itself, but again, it's just a way of showing you how to move around the layers if you need to. So what we need to do now is to select these 3 layers that we've created and then put them into a layer group. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and the Shift key and then use the left square bracket key, and you'll see there that all of those 3 layers have been selected. And then just by pressing Ctrl and G or Command and G on a Mac, I've grouped those layers. So now I can just double click on there and then rename that layer group. So I wouldn't normally apply this technique with the opacity at 100%, but because it's an action and different images are different, I always keep my effects at their highest strength and then run the action, and then I can just reduce it afterwards. So now that the action creation has been finished, if I just hit the stop button, and then I can just minimize all of those steps, and then let's just delete that layer group there. So to run the action, all I need to do is click on it to highlight it, and then just press the play button, and there we have our effect. Even if I click on, let's say, levels 1 in the center here and click play, you'll see there that I've just created another bleach bypass layer group. It hasn't become confused, even though it's between other layers, because of the way that the layers were selected using those shortcuts. So I don't actually need that one there, so let's delete it. And then just by clicking on that top one again, we can take the opacity down to something that works for this image. So we're just desaturating slightly, kind of accentuating the texture and adding a touch of contrast as well. So that is how to create and playback actions in Photoshop to save time when editing.